In a bright and musical kingdom called Luminara, the mornings always began with color. The sun did not simply rise there, it performed. Golden light spilled across the castle walls as if someone had tipped over a giant pot of honey, slowly dripping warmth into every corner. Fountains giggled as water jumped and danced in looping arcs, catching the light and throwing tiny rainbows onto nearby stones. The rooftops shimmered like they had been brushed with sugar, and the streets slowly woke up to the sound of bells, birds, and cheerful chatter drifting from open windows. Birds in Luminara wore feathers in every shade imaginable: soft blues, fiery oranges, gentle pinks, and glowing yellows. They sang not just songs, but feelings. Some melodies sounded like laughter, others like gentle comfort. Even the clouds seemed to drift more slowly, fluffy and curious, as if they did not want to miss anything happening below. In this kingdom, the world itself felt alive, listening and responding to the hearts of its people on one such magical morning, when the air felt especially light and hopeful. A royal baby was born in the tallest tower of the castle the moment it happened. Bells rang across the kingdom, echoing joy from hill to hill. Trumpets cheered from the balconies, bright and proud. Shopkeepers paused mid-step, bakers froze with dough on their hands, and children leaned closer to hear the news as it spread like sunlight. A prince had arrived. The baby prince was named Ricky. At first glance, everyone smiled politely, clapping and cheering as expected. The nurses beamed, and the court bowed respectfully. But then something unexpected caught their eyes. On top of Ricky's tiny head was a curious little tuft of hair that stuck straight up, curling slightly at the end as if it had a playful mind of its own. No matter how gently the royal nurses smoothed it down, the tuft bounced right back up again, proud and determined. Some people chuckled softly. Others raised their eyebrows. "That is unusual," whispered one court lady behind her fan. "Well," said another with a small shrug, "at least it is memorable." The king laughed kindly, and the queen smiled, holding her baby close. To them, Ricky was perfect. As Ricky grew, the tuft grew too. It became fluffier, springier, and impossible to ignore. When the wind blew, it wiggled like it was dancing. When Ricky laughed, it bobbed happily. When he thought very hard, it stood even taller, as if cheering him on and whispering, "Yes. Think more." Servants tried different combs. Tailors tried different hats. Nothing worked. The tuft always returned to its proud little pose, but the tuft was not the only thing that made Ricky different. While other children in the castle ran through halls playing tag, sliding across polished floors, or arguing over toys, Ricky preferred quieter corners. He liked to sit near the tall windows, watching the world carefully. He noticed how shadows moved with the sun, how people spoke without words, and how problems could be solved if one only paused long enough to think. He noticed things others missed. He noticed when guards were tired, when cooks were worried, when gardeners needed help. He asked gentle questions and listened carefully to the answers. By the time Ricky was 7, he could solve riddles that puzzled grown advisors. By 10, he could untangle disagreements with just a few kind sentences. And by 12, he could see answers where others only saw confusion. Still, whenever he walked through the palace halls, people looked first at his hair. "There goes the prince with the funny tuft," some whispered, thinking he could not hear. Ricky always heard. At first, it made his chest feel tight. Later, it made him thoughtful. He never became angry. Instead, he smiled gently and kept walking, though sometimes his smile felt a little heavy, like it was carrying a quiet question no one had answered yet. The king and queen loved Ricky deeply. They admired his clever mind, his patience, and his warm heart. They often watched him from a distance, proud but thoughtful. They worried too. They knew how the world could be. They knew people often judged what they saw before they listened. And listening was Ricky's greatest strength. One evening, as soft lanterns floated through the palace garden like glowing stars, the queen brushed Ricky's hair carefully. The night smelled of flowers and warm stone. As always, the tuft bounced back up again, refusing to stay down. "Mother?" Ricky asked quietly, his voice small but steady. Do you think people will ever see me before they see my hair? The queen paused. Her hand rested gently on his head. She thought of the world outside the palace walls. Then she kissed his forehead. The right people will, she said softly. And when they do, they will see much more than that. Ricky nodded, though he was not completely sure. Still, her words settled warmly in his chest, like a tiny glowing light. As years passed, the kingdom prepared for the prince's future. Tutors arrived with long scrolls and colorful maps. Artists painted portraits, though none could quite capture the sparkle in Ricky's eyes when he solved a problem. Tailors made fine clothes, carefully adjusting collars and hats to make room for the ever-proud Tuft. Then one day, a great gathering was announced. Nobles, thinkers, inventors, and visitors from faraway lands filled the castle halls. The air buzzed with excitement and curiosity. They came to test the prince, to see if he was truly ready to one day lead. Ricky walked into the grand hall calmly, his steps steady. Murmurs followed him like tiny ripples in water. That hair, someone whispered. He looks different, said another. Ricky stood tall anyway, reminding himself to breathe. The first challenge came from a tall man wearing a shiny robe and a voice that boomed too loudly. If two villages argue over one bridge, the man asked, what should be done? Some expected Ricky to hesitate. Others expected him to give a clever but proud answer. Instead, he smiled. Ask them why they need the bridge, Ricky said gently. They may discover they are trying to reach the same place together. The room grew quiet. Then thoughtful. Next came a puzzle with glowing tiles that changed colors when touched. Then a riddle that twisted words into knots. Ricky solved them all, not quickly, but thoughtfully. He explained his ideas so clearly that even children sitting near the back nodded, along with wide eyes. Some visitors leaned forward. Some smiled. Some began to forget about the Tuft entirely. After the gathering, a small group of children approached Ricky in the garden. One brave girl pointed upward. Does your hair really do that all by itself? She asked. Ricky laughed, a warm, musical sound. It does, he said. I think it likes attention. The children giggled, and for a moment, Ricky felt lighter than air, but not everyone was kind. A few nobles still snickered behind their fans. A few travelers shook their heads. He is clever, they admitted. But looks still matter. Ricky heard those words too, that night. He sat alone in the garden, watching fireflies flicker like tiny stars. His tuft drooped slightly as if tired. Why is it so hard? He murmured. Why can't cleverness be enough? A soft voice answered him. Because some hearts need time to learn. Ricky turned. Sitting on the stone bench was an old storyteller named Lumail, whose beard sparkled like frost and whose eyes held 1,000 tailies. You see, Lumail said gently, magic works slowly on those who fear it. And you, my prince, are full of a magic they do not yet understand. Ricky listened closely, feeling calmer with each word. You will not change by hiding who you are, Lumail continued. Your gift is not only your mind. It is your patience. Ricky thought about this long after the storyteller left. The next day, instead of staying in the palace, Ricky walked through the town. He helped bakers solve problems with their ovens. He helped painters mix colors they had never tried before. He listened to shopkeepers, children, travelers, and anyone who needed a kind ear. He never spoke to show off. He spoke to help. Slowly, smiles followed him. Laughter replaced whispers. People began to say, here comes Prince Ricky, he always knows what to do. The tuft still bounced. The difference was that fewer people pointed. One afternoon, as golden light filled the streets, Ricky stood on a small bridge watching the river sparkle below. He did not know what the future held. He only knew that he would keep being himself, and somewhere deep inside, hope quietly grew, because even if the world noticed his hair first, his heart was already shining. And that, though no one yet knew it, was the beginning of something truly magical. Beyond the rolling hills of Luminara, past silver streams that whispered softly as they flowed and wide fields that glowed warm and golden at sunset, stood another gentle called Belliora. It was a land that did not rush. Mornings there were calm and unhurried. filled with the scent of fresh flowers and the quiet laughter of people who had learned to enjoy small moments. Gardens bloomed even when no one was watching, as if the flowers themselves believed beauty did not need applause. In the heart of Beliora lived a young princess named Elawan. Elawan was admired by many, but truly known by very few. From the time she was small, people spoke of her gentle smile, her graceful walk, and the way her voice sounded like a soft melody. Compliments followed her wherever she went, yet they always felt unfinished. No one asked what made her happy. No one wondered what thoughts filled her quiet moments. She smiled politely, just as she had been taught, but inside her heart carried questions much like Ricky's once did. She wondered why everyone spoke for her instead of with her. She wondered why being admired could sometimes feel lonelier than being alone. In grand rooms filled with people, she often felt invisible. One afternoon, as Elawan sat on a balcony overlooking the palace gardens, she sighed quietly. The air was warm and sunlight painted gentle patterns on the stone floor. Below her, butterflies danced freely, landing wherever they pleased, never asking permission. She watched them for a long time. I wish, she whispered to herself, just once, I could feel that free. Far away in Luminara, word had begun to spread about a prince who solved problems with kindness and listened with care. Travelers spoke of his unusual hair, yes, but more often they spoke of how he made people feel. They said he listened without judging, helped without boasting, and spoke as if every voice mattered. These stories floated across kingdoms like dandelion seeds, carried by wind and wonder, and eventually they reached Beliora one evening. Elawan stood quietly in the town square as a traveling musician played beneath glowing lanterns. Between songs he shared stories of his journeys. They say Prince Ricky sees people, the musician said, strumming softly. Not just their crowns or their faces, but their hearts. Elawan felt something stir inside her, something gentle but strong. For the first time in a long while she felt curious instead of careful. Not long after, a grand festival was announced between the two kingdoms, meant to celebrate friendship and shared hope. Luminara and Beliora would open their gates to one another, filling the wide fields between them with music, color, and laughter. Lanterns were prepared, stages were built, and banners fluttered joyfully in the breeze. When the day arrived, Ricky came not in a grand carriage but on horseback, riding alongside a small group of companions. He waved cheerfully to children who ran alongside the road, laughing as they tried to keep up. His tuft bounced proudly in the breeze, refusing to be ignored. As he entered Beliora, Ricky felt the familiar weight of curious glances. Some people stared, some whispered. But he also felt something new, a gentle calm, as if the kingdom itself was welcoming him, not judging him. Elawan watched from a distance as the visitors arrived. When she first saw Ricky, she noticed his hair, just like everyone else. But then she noticed his eyes. They were kind and curious, not rushed or guarded. And then she noticed his smile. It was not practiced or proud. It was warm, as if it belonged to someone who truly enjoyed being there. Their first meeting was quiet and simple. They met near a fountain shaped like a circle of open hands, water flowing gently from palm to palm. Elawan nearly dropped her book when Ricky greeted her, startled by his easy warmth. She laughed softly, embarrassed. Ricky laughed too, not at her, but with her, and somehow that made everything easier. They spoke about small things at first. The music drifting through the gardens, the flowers that bloomed even in shade, the way the fountain sounded like it was whispering secrets. Ricky listened closely, nodding as if every word mattered. Elawan found herself speaking more freely than she ever had before. Surprised by her own honesty, days passed and the festival continued. Ricky and Elawan walked through lantern-lit paths, shared quiet jokes, and helped children with games and puzzles. Ricky knelt to listen when children spoke, and Elawan noticed how his attention never wandered. When Elawan spoke of her worries, Ricky did not rush to fix them. He did not interrupt or offer clever answers. He simply listened. You don't have to be anything more than yourself, he said one evening as they watched fireflies glow like tiny stars. That's already something rare. Elawan felt her heart grow lighter. as if a door she did not know existed had opened. But as their friendship deepened, whispers followed. Some guests murmured about Ricky's appearance, still clinging to old habits. Others spoke of Elowen's role, suggesting she should choose someone more suitable, someone who fit their idea of perfection. The words were not loud, but they were sharp enough to be felt. Elowen grew quiet. One morning, she did not join Ricky in the gardens. Instead, she sat alone in her room, staring at her reflection in a polished mirror. She saw the princess everyone admired, but she wondered if anyone would ever truly know her. Ricky noticed her absence immediately. He did not push or demand answers. That evening, he left a small folded note by her door. Inside were just a few words written carefully. "You are already enough." Elowen read the note again and again. Each time, the words felt warmer. That night, under a sky full of stars, the festival reached its final celebration. Music filled the air, and lanterns floated upward like glowing dreams, carrying wishes into the night. Elowen stepped forward, her heart beating fast. She found Ricky standing near the fountain, his tuft glowing softly in the lantern light. "I was afraid," she said honestly. "Afraid of choosing my own voice." Ricky smiled gently. "So was I, once." They stood together, not as prince and princess, but as two hearts learning to be brave. The lanterns rose higher. Something magical happened. The air shimmered, and a soft glow wrapped around them. It was not a spell or a flash, just a quiet warmth. Like the world approving of their honesty, people noticed. They saw not Ricky's hair, but the way he stood, kind, steady, true. They saw not just Elowen's beauty, but her confidence. Shining brighter than any crown. In time, the whispers faded. Ricky returned to Luminara, and Elowen remained in Beliora, but their bond stayed strong. Letters traveled between them, filled with ideas, dreams, and gentle humor. When they met again, it felt like no time had passed at all. Years later, when Ricky became king, he ruled with the same patience and care he had always shown. Elowen stood beside him, not as a decoration, but as a partner, wise, thoughtful, and free. Together, they taught their kingdoms a quiet lesson, that true beauty is not what catches the eye first. That love grows from listening. That wit and kindness shine longer than any outward charm. And in Luminara, when the sun rose each morning and performed its golden dance, people smiled a little wider, knowing they lived in a world where hearts mattered most. As for Ricky's tuft, it never changed. It still bounced proudly, and that was exactly the way everyone loved it.